Okay, so we're back and diving deeper into the story of Tom.
Yeah, picking up right where we left off.
Exactly. And, it's really fascinating to see how his story just keeps unfolding.
It really is like one thing leads to another and another.
We're going to really get into all that today, right?
Absolutely. So we've already talked about Tom's connection to that mage Marifa.
Right, and that whole shared consciousness thing.
Yeah, which is wild.
Yeah.
One body, maybe two minds.
Totally. And then there's the whole world of Zara, too.
Right, with its own rules and its own dangers.
So where are we now with Tom? What's happened since last time?
Oh, this is where Chapter 8, Ubeko, that's the alley in English, comes in.
Okay, Obeko from the Texto Colado, right?
Exactly. This chapter is going to give us some crucial clues about what's going on.
So let's jump in. Where does Obeko begin?
Well, we find Tom waking up after a rainy night. He's feeling a bit groggy.
Understandable. I hate those mornings.
Me too. And his parents are out for some reason.
Okay.
There's no mentioning his dad went for a paseo, just a walk,
Sure, but the real issue.
The real issue, as always, is breakfast.
Or the lack thereof.
Exactly. No breakfast in sight.
Poor Tom.
I know, right? So he decides to head out to a cafeteria.
Makes sense. He's got to eat.
Right. And on his way out, there's this little detail.
Go on.
He thinks about maybe stopping by the papelaria, the stationery store.
Uh-huh. And why is that?
Because his last blank book got carbonizado.
Carbonized.
Yeah, carbonized, like completely burnt up.
Wow. Okay, that raises some questions.
Definitely. What was he doing that could carbonize a notebook?
We'll have to keep an eye out for clues about that one.
For sure. But before we move on, there's a quick scene with his dog.
Oh, yeah.
Just a little detail, but it kind of paints a picture,
I love those little moments.
Right. So the dog's sleeping soundly, snoring away, belly up, tongue hanging out.
Oh, that's adorable.
Yeah. So anyway, Tom sets off for the cafeteria. It's like a 25-minute walk.
Okay, so a bit of a trek.
Yeah. Further than his school, he mentions.
Interesting. And what's going through his mind as he walks?
Well, his thoughts drift back to his conversation with Temulo.
Temula, right? The one who's teaching him enchantments.
Yeah, and specifically, he remembers Temulo's nervousness about the enchantment against the shantanyn.
Right, the creatures that seem to be a constant threat in Zara.
Exactly. And this is where we see Tom's thinking shift a little.
How so?
He starts to question his initial view of Zara. Maybe it's not this perfect utopia after all.
I see.
He's wondering if there's more to the enchantment than he's been told.
Like he's not getting the whole story.
Right. He's getting a bit more suspicious,
Yeah.
which is interesting.
Definitely shows his character developing.
Totally. So he gets to the cafeteria, totally lost in thought. And it's busy, lots of people.
Yeah.
He almost walks right into someone.
That's always awkward.
Totally. And then who does he bump into?
April.
April, Mandy's cousin.
The one and only.
Okay, so this is the first time they're actually talking face to face.
Yeah. Although they've exchanged messages before we know that.
Right, but this is different. Absolutely. And April being April, she invites Tom to sit with her.
Okay. And what's going on in her mind?
Well, the text tells us she's curious about why Mandy was ever involved with Tom in the first place.
I guess that makes sense.
Right, and she's also aware that Tom is a bensado por car, blessed by car,
So that divine favor is still having an impact.
Definitely. Even if people don't totally understand it, they can sense something's different about him.
Interesting. Okay, so they're sitting together now. What happens?
Well, it's awkward teenage small talk.
Of course.
April kind of assumes Tom's doing fine after the whole Mandy thing.
Ouch.
Right, and Tom not wanting to get into all the mentions. He has other things on his mind.
Smart move.
Totally. And then there's this little moment of physical contact.
Go on.
April puts her hand on his arm just for a second.
Okay. And then?
His chocolate milk and strawberry chocolate cake arrive.
Classic.
Right on cue, her hand disappears.
Like she was never there.
Exactly. And Tom tries to brush off her questions about what's bothering him.
Just school stuff, he says?
Yep. Nothing to see here.
But April's not giving up that easily.
Nope. She brings up the destruction of that old shopping mall.
Oh, wow. Yeah, we talked about that before.
Right. And she lets it slip that Mandy told her Tom might have been involved.
Uh-oh.
Tom almost chokes on his chocolate milk.
I can imagine.
He denies it, of course, says he only heard about it from his dad.
But his reaction probably didn't help his case.
Not at all. It just made him seem more suspicious.
And April's definitely intrigued now.
Totally. The text says, she immediately texts Mandy, like, you won't believe this.
So Tom's past is coming back to haunt him.
It definitely seems that way. And it's all tied to that strange hidden room, too.
The one connected to the mall incident?
Exactly. April's clearly putting the pieces together, and Tom's right in the middle of it.
So what does Tom do?
He wants to get out of there as fast as possible.
Understandable.
April tries to keep him talking, but Tom's having an internal struggle.
Like he wants to stay, but something's telling him to go.
Right, the text says, "An alarme toca na sua cabeza vazia." Like an alarm going off in his empty head.
Wow, that's a powerful image.
It is, and it's that same instinct we've seen before.
Mm.
Maybe Marifa's influence, maybe Carr's blessing.
Warning him somehow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he says goodbye to April, but it's not very convincing.
Like he's just trying to get away?
Yeah, she can tell it, and she watches him leave, thinking he's changed somehow.
Okay, so Thomas gauged the awkward breakfast, and then what?
Well, he goes to that stationery store, the Papalaria.
To get more blank notebooks?
Yep. Spends his whole monthly allowance on them.
Wow, he must be serious about these enchantments.
He is. As he's walking home, he's already going over the steps in his head.
Okay, but then things get weird again.
You could say that again. He's heading towards the park, and then suddenly,
What?
he's not on the street anymore.
Where is he?
He's in this long alleyway squeezed between two normal-looking houses.
Wait, so it's like he teleported?
It seems that way, and there's this weird blue and pink neon light at the end of the alley.
Okay, this is starting to sound familiar.
Right. It reminds him of that street with the mansions and the shantanyn.
The one that freaked him out before.
Exactly. But this time it's different. The atmosphere is different.
I see. And how does Tom react this time?
This is interesting. He doesn't freak out like he used to.
That's a change.
The text says he doesn't ignore it or faint. He just accepts it.
Like he's getting used to this kind of thing.
Yeah, maybe it's Carr's blessing, maybe it's the mage's influence, but he's definitely different.
Wow. Okay, so what does he do?
He walks towards the light, determined to see what's at the end of the alley.
Of course he does.
As he gets closer, he sees the neon light is actually a sign.
What kind of sign?
There's a blue arrow pointing down towards an iron door and a pink neon Benvindo welcome.
Okay, that's a little creepy.
It is. The door is described as really heavy. It drags on the ground when it opens.
Oh, and there's a black cat, too.
Yeah, just chilling on the wall. But Tom doesn't even notice it.
He's too focused on the door and what's behind it.
Exactly.
So what is behind the door?
A dark and humid basement stairway.
Blah.
And there are no lights at all.
So he can't see where he's going.
Nope. He immediately wishes he had his phone for a flashlight.
Smart thinking.
And he even thinks about using magic to light the way. He's worried he might hurt himself.
Makes sense. Magic can be unpredictable.
Especially in a strange place like this.
So how does he get down the stairs?
Slowly and carefully, he uses the light from the street above, and his eyes start to adjust.
So he's getting better at navigating these weird situations.
Yeah, he's learning to adapt. His senses are getting sharper.
Okay, so he gets to the bottom of the stairs and
Another door.
another one.
This one's iron too, but it's decorated with these intricate bird-like creatures.
Okay.
It's glowing with these weird ideographic neon symbols.
Can he read them?
Nope. He wishes he had his translator glasses again.
Seems like he always forgets something important.
Right, it's like a running theme.
Okay, so he opens the door and
He finds himself in a room that's strangely familiar.
familiar how...
It's similar to the place where he always wakes up in Carr, you know, that temple-like space.
Uh-huh.
But this time there's a different statue in the center.
What's it like?
Well, it's this black statue of a creature that's part lizard, part woman.
That's a weird combo.
She's got this almost human face, but her eyes are really big and she doesn't have a mouth.
That's creepy.
And she's wearing this skull helmet that extends out beyond her face.
Ew.
And there's long hair flowing all the way to the floor.
Okay, this is getting weirder.
It definitely is. Her body's described as long and muscular, and she's naked.
Naked.
Yeah, just a few scraps of fabric here and there, and she's got a long tail wrapped around the base of the statue.
So not exactly a serene and divine figure like Carr.
Not at all. This one's more primal, more
Yeah.
unsettling.
And what's her pose like?
It's kind of like those statues of Roman emperors.
Okay, I can kind of picture that.
Right. One arm is outstretched with this clawed hand, and the other arm's holding these folds of fabric. And there's a weird bird perched near her hand.
Okay, so this is a very different vibe from Carr.
Definitely Tom's reaction is interesting. He finds her familiar and comforting in a way.
That's strange.
It is, but also sexy and frightening.
Wow, so it's a whole mix of emotions.
Yeah, totally. Unlike his reaction to Carr, which was more straightforward awe and respect.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so what happens next?
As Tom gets closer to the statue, this pale blue light starts to glow behind it,
Okay.
and the light forms into a translucent version of the statue.
Like a ghost of the statue.
Yeah, and Tom immediately gets defensive.
Because he's thinking about the shantanyn.
Exactly, they can shapeshift, remember?
Right, so he doesn't trust this light figure.
Nope, even though there was that welcome sign.
Okay, but the light figure does something to try and calm him down.
Right? It raises its clawed hands like, don't worry.
Okay,
And it starts to speak. Its voice is distant and ethereal.
even though it's right there.
Yeah, and it tells Tom to be calm. It says it didn't bring him here for a fight.
What does Tom say?
He just says, Certo, okay. But you can tell he doesn't believe it.
Of course not. He's smart to be suspicious.
Totally. So then Tom asks the obvious questions.
Who are you and why am I here?
Exactly. And the light figure gives him a name.
What is it?
Shad uma das divindades de Emya. Shad, one of the divinities of Emya.
Another divinity?
Yep, and she even does a little bow.
But Tom's not buying it.
Nope, he's seen a divinity before Carr, and this is nothing like that.
So he calls her out on it?
He asks why she wouldn't just send a representative or something.
That's a good point.
It is, and Shad explains that it's because her own plane of existence, Emya, is really far away.
So she can't manifest properly.
Right, this ethereal form is the best she can do.
Okay, but Tom's still skeptical.
He is, but he decides to hear her out. He's curious.
So he asks her why she brought him there.
And Shad gets straight to the point.
She needs his help.
To find aquele que você chama de mago, the one you call the mage.
The mage Marifa.
Yep, and she points right at Tom's head when she says it.
Wow. So she knows about their connection.
And she knows what Tom calls him.
This is getting tense.
It is. Tom's getting even more wary now.
Understandably, he doesn't trust her.
And he asks why he should help her.
What does Shad say to that?
She offers to tell him things about the mage that he doesn't know.
As a sign of good faith.
Exactly. She wants his full attention.
So what does Tom think?
He figures even if she's lying, it could be useful information.
Like knowing his enemy better.
Right. So he decides to listen.
What does Shad tell him?
First, she reveals the mage's full name.
Which is?
Marifa Mail o mayor ritualista de Emya. Marifa Mail, the greatest ritualist of Emya.
Okay, so we finally have a name.
And she calls him her agraciado mais talentoso, her most talented graced one.
Okay, and Tom picks up on something interesting here.
What's that?
He realizes why the maid hasn't told him his full name.
Right. It's probably connected to all this trouble he's in.
Okay, and then Shad says something that seems to contradict her earlier explanation.
What's it?
She says that Emya, her plane of existence, isn't actually that far from Tom's world.
Huh. That's weird.
It is, and Tom remembers something the mage told him.
What was that?
That the planet where he found those translator glasses was the mage's home planet.
Right. And it didn't seem that far away.
So either Shad's lying or something's off.
Definitely Shad's reaction is interesting. She says, incredible.
Like she's surprised Tom knows that.
Yeah. And then she kind of backpedals. She says, Emya is close, but she's not there right now.
Okay. And then she introduces a new concept.
What's that?
Grasa interna y internal and external grace.
Okay, that sounds complicated.
It does, and Tom's confused too.
So Shad tries to explain it. She says the children of Zara call it Amandla.
Amandla.
And there's this hint of disdain in her voice when she says it.
Like she doesn't like that word.
Yeah, and Tom recognizes it, of course.
Amandla is that energy they use for magic in Zara, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it seems there's a different understanding of this power in Emya.
And Shad's not a fan of the Zararian way.
Not at all. And then she starts telling Tom this story about her children in Emya.
What about them?
They were persecuted, she's marginalized, even executed, because they use internal grace. Amandla.
And that was bad.
Apparently in Emya, people believe that only nature provides true grace.
So using internal grace is like a heresy?
It seems that way.
Wow. Okay, so Tom's hearing about this whole other conflict.
He is, and he asks a very logical question.
Which is?
If it's so dangerous, why would anyone use a mandala?
Good question.
And Shad gives this interesting answer.
What does she say?
She compares it to faith on earth. She says belief systems often get stronger when they're persecuted.
I see.
And she explains that her own grace manifests internally in her children.
So it's not a choice for them.
It seems that way, and it requires specific rituals to use.
Okay, and then she implies something pretty big.
What's that?
That Marifa was also persecuted for using a mandala.
Wow. But Tom has trouble believing this.
Because he's seen what he thinks is the mage's home planet.
And it seemed peaceful.
But Shad explains that her gift only manifests when her children are older.
Right, it's not something you're born with.
And she says Emya's culture is very different from Zara's.
More like Earth, she says, where magic is practical and has a purpose.
And this reminds Tom of something.
What's that?
The hostile environment where he found the translator glasses.
Right, the place where he first encountered the shantanyn.
So Emya seems like a dangerous place.
Definitely not the utopia that Zara appears to be.
Okay, so what happened to Marifa?
Shad says he isolated himself in his golden castle in space.
The one Tom saw from a distance.
Exactly. And Tom confirms that he's seen it.
He even asks how she knows all this.
But she just brushes it off. She says the castle is realmente lindo, really beautiful.
And then she reveals something else about Marifa.
She says he has this insatiable thirst for knowledge.
Okay, and what did that lead him to do?
To explore other planes of existence
Okay.
by using Bonico's puppets, which she clarifies are golems.
Golems.
Yeah. And she asks Tom if he's seen them.
And he has.
She assumes he learned about golems in Zara.
But then she gets really excited.
She starts talking about Marifa's perfect ritual.
What was it?
She calls it the most beautiful magic she's ever seen.
And what did this ritual do?
It allowed him to send his consciousness into another body.
A body without grace.
Tom's body.
So this is how they ended up sharing a body.
It seems that way. It's reincarnation, basically.
Wow. Okay, and then Shad makes her big request.
She asks Tom to help her bring Marifa back to Enya.
To bring the mage back to her?
Yep. But she knows Tom probably doesn't want to share his mind anymore.
So what does Tom say?
He asks a really important question.
What's that?
Won't the mage know everything he tells Shad? But Shad assures him that's not how it works.
How so?
She says anything said in her temple won't be remembered by the mage.
It'll just be like a normal everyday occurrence.
Exactly, so there's no risk for Tom.
Okay, but Tom's still not convinced.
He asks why she needs his help if she's a divinity.
Good point.
And Shad tells him to go home and think about it.
She says they'll talk again.
And she offers him her blessing as a sign of good faith.
Her blood.
Yeah, she extends her clawed hand, and Tom's enveloped in this pale blue light.
Oh, okay, this is getting really weird.
It is, and then Shad and the light just disappear.
Leaving Tom alone again.
Yep. But Tom's thinking hard about everything she told him.
He doesn't trust her.
He thinks the information might be useful.
Even if it's not the whole truth.
Right. And he even wonders if his curiosity is why Carr favors him.
Like, Carr approves of him seeking knowledge.
It's a possibility.
So what does Tom do next?
He goes back up the stairs. His mind's racing.
With all this new information.
He decides he needs to talk to the mage.
To understand what's really going on.
Exactly. And he's got a plan.
What is it?
He's going to try and bring up Shad casually.
To see if the mage reacts.
If he remembers their conversation.
That's smart.
He wants to know if Shad was telling the truth.
Okay, so he leaves the temple and...
He walks back through the alleyway.
And...
It disappears behind him as soon as he reaches the street.
like it was never there.
Exactly. And Tom's thinking about all this.
And wishing he could avoid these weird situations.
He just wants a normal life.
But that's not really an option, is it?
Not for him.
So what does he do?
He goes to a nearby park, finds a quiet spot.
What?
To practice the enchantments he learned from Tamilo.
The ones for the notebooks?
Yep. He doesn't want anyone to see him.
Okay.
He successfully performs the enchantment.
Just like Temulo taught him.
And he notices something.
What's that?
He's getting better at manipulating Amandla.
The energy for magic.
Right? Maybe it's Carr's blessing, maybe it's Shad's, but he's definitely improving.
Interesting.
So now he's got these enchanted notebooks that should repel the shantanyn.
That's good news.
It is.
So then he heads home.
And his parents are already there.
They're back from their outing.
Yep. And they're all happy and cheerful.
That's nice.
And his dad has a gift for him.
What is it?
A box of homemade chocolates, shaped like RPG stuff.
RPGs stuff?
Yeah, dice, swords, shields, little figures.
That's really thoughtful.
It is, even though Tom doesn't really play RPGs.
But he appreciates the gesture.
Especially since he's still hungry.
Right. He only had that weird breakfast with April.
But of course his mom scolds him for wanting to eat sweets before dinner.
Moms will be moms.
So Tom goes to his room to study Zorarian.
He's still working on that.
He takes out the enchanted notebooks and his translator glasses.
Okay.
He opens the notebook and the text starts to move around.
Like it did with the manga.
Exactly. It forms into actual Zorarian words.
So the enchantment worked.
It did. And what he reads is fascinating.
What does it say?
It starts with this kind of mythical stuff about the divinities giving the people of Zara speech and writing.
So their language is a divine gift.
That's how they see it. And then it shifts into this more instructional style.
Like a textbook.
Yeah, teaching him the basics of Zorarian grammar and vocabulary.
And his glasses are helping him.
They show him the original Zorarian alphabet, along with the translation.
That's useful.
It is. Tom spends a few hours studying.
How's he doing?
He's finding it tough, but he feels like he's getting some help.
From Carr, maybe?
Maybe, or maybe some residual knowledge from the mage.
Interesting, he's making progress, though.
He is, He can recognize the alphabet now and separate words and understand simple
But he
phrases
still needs the glasses.
for now.
Okay, so he takes a break from studying and
Get some leftovers from the kitchen.
eats while watching TV.
Yeah, needs to de-stress after all that study.
Then he watches a movie and falls asleep.
And as always, he wakes up in Zara.
Back in the white stone house.
Yep. And the mage's mother is there watching the landscape.
And the mage.
He's there too, looking like Tom, of course.
Right. So what happens?
The mage congratulates Tom on enchanting the notebooks.
He's pleased with his progress.
And Tom compares it to something he saw in a movie. The mage makes this interesting comment about Earth.
What does he say?
He says Earth's lack of magic gives it a certain freedom.
Huh. That's an interesting perspective.
It is. And then Tom asks a question that's been on his mind.
What's that?
He asks if being from Zara and blessed by Kar limits his magic. And the mage says yes.
So Tom's origins are holding him back.
In a way.
And then he asks another question.
About how people get blessed.
Right.
And the mage compares it to baptism.
Okay.
He says blessings work differently on different planes.
So it's not a universal thing?
Nope.
Tom asks if this means there's some flexibility with magic?
But like maybe he can bend the rules a little?
Right.
But the mage says, no, not really.
How come?
Because divinities allow enchantments, and you have to respect their rules.
So it's like a hierarchy of power.
Yep. The divinities are at the top.
Tom thinks about this, and he comes to a conclusion.
What's that?
He says that if he's not under anyone's shadow, then there are no rules for him.
Meaning on Earth.
Right.
And the mage agrees he is excited by this idea.
Like it opens up possibilities.
But also risks.
Right. No rules means no safety net.
Exactly. And then Tom does something clever.
What's that?
He brings up the topic of divinities imposing restrictions.
He's trying to get the mage to talk about Shad.
Without actually mentioning her. He even specifically mentions his original divinity.
Meaning Kar.
Yep. And the mage's answer is interesting.
What does he say?
He agrees that divinities could impose restrictions. He says they don't usually do that.
Why not?
He's not sure. Maybe they can't. Maybe they just don't want to.
So he's not ruling out the possibility.
Nope.
Okay, so Tom shifts gears a little.
What does he ask about?
Shared gifts and memories.
Since they're supposed to be the same person.
Right.
And the mage explains that he's lived many lives.
So he has a lot of memories.
A ton. He says his head is full.
And Tom's body can't handle all that information.
So some things just come naturally to him.
Like his magic.
The mage says Tom's talent isn't random. It's because of him.
Okay.
And he says Tom will become more like him over time.
As their body remembers.
Exactly. And he explains why he's suppressing the memories.
Why?
He wants Tom to have a normal childhood.
That's actually kind of sweet.
It is, but he says the memories will come back when they're needed.
Until there's no separation between them.
Right, and Tom's still got questions.
About what?
What the mage's consciousness is doing when they're not talking.
Right, and how he knows what Tom's doing.
And if he takes over when Tom's unconscious?
Those are good questions.
And a mage gives some interesting answers.
What does he say?
He says he doesn't exist separately from Tom.
Meaning...
When Tom's awake, he is Tom.
So they're really merged.
And their conversations are like the mage's consciousness pausing.
Like hitting a pause button.
So he can talk to Tom.
That's mind-blowing.
It is. And then Tom asks the big question.
The one that Shad put in his head.
Can they separate their consciousnesses permanently?
To avoid the memory overload.
And the mage hesitates.
He doesn't want to answer.
But he admits it's possible. Like transferring consciousness to a golem.
Right.
He says it would block his influence on Tom.
And he reminds Tom that he wouldn't even exist without him. So he's making it clear that separation is a bad idea.
Definitely.
But Tom presses the issue.
And the mage gets serious.
What does he say?
He says it's possible, but there are risks.
Because the original ritual was for transfer upon death?
Not separation during life.
So it's uncharted territory.
And he says even if they separate, they'll still be connected.
Through their shared origin.
And Tom would lose all the knowledge the mage has.
Tom's not convinced.
So the mage tries a different tactic.
What does he do?
He talks about the opportunities Tom has.
Like what?
Learning about the universe, traveling to different worlds.
It's a pretty tempting offer.
It is. And the only thing Tom has to do is accept the memories.
Eventually.
But Tom's still suspicious.
He thinks the mage has another motive.
He asks him point blank what his real goal is.
What does the mage say?
He starts talking about seeing the cosmos, experiencing different cultures.
But Tom's not buying it.
So the mage finally admits the truth.
What is it?
He's running from a divinity.
A divinity.
And he chose Tom's plane because divine influence is weak there.
So Tom's basically a shield.
It seems that way.
Wow. And the mage says he needs to be prepared to face this divinity eventually.
Which means Tom does too.
And Tom is not happy about this.
He feels like he's been used.
And the mage ends the conversation right there.
He says it's time for Tom to wake up in Zara.
What happens?
Tom's vision goes white, and then he's back in the white stone house,
Sitting on a sofa.
facing Kara's statue, and he notices something.
What's that?
He's not as dusty as.
All right, so we're back and ready to dive deeper into this world you've been sharing with us.
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited to unpack this section.
Me too. We last left off with Tom back in Zara.
Right, and things seem to be taking a bit of a darker turn this time around.
Yeah, well, more than a bit, I'd say. I mean, he's still trying to figure out his place in this world, trying to navigate the magic and the whole divinity thing.
It's a lot for anyone to handle,
Right.
especially when you're essentially thrown into it head first.
Yeah, exactly. And this part of the story really highlights that clash between Tom's desire for normalcy and the extraordinary reality of Zara.
You can really feel that tension in his actions and thoughts. His yearning for a quote-unquote normal day, like you said, is almost like a setup for the chaos that's about to unfold.
It is, totally. And we see that right from the start this time around.
Yeah, like how he notices his body isn't as dusty as usual.
Right, which is such a weird detail, but it hints at something being different. Maybe his connection to Zara is changing, or someone is cleaning him up. Who knows?
It's like a little breadcrumb the author threw in there to make us think.
Exactly. And then there's his decision to meet up with Trat. He's clearly looking for a connection, some kind of grounding in this strange place.
Remember how he contacts her? It's not like he's calling her on the phone or anything.
Oh, yeah, the enchantment tied to a vision of his Earth home. It's so wild to think about.
Right. It just emphasizes how unique his situation is. He's straddling two worlds in a way that most of us can't even fathom.
And then we have Carr appearing, which is always a bit of a wild card, right?
Definitely, Carr's role in this part of the story is interesting. You get this sense of a limited perspective, almost like they're observing from a distance and can only offer so much guidance.
Yeah, I noticed that too. Like, their advice about positivity while well-meaning feels somewhat generic, doesn't it?
Yeah, like Carr doesn't quite grasp the depth of Tom's situation, or perhaps they're bound by certain rules that prevent them from intervening more directly.
And then Tom brings up Shad, and the whole atmosphere changes, doesn't it?
Totally.
Hmm.
That's when things start to feel a bit more ominous. There's this hesitation from Carr, almost a guardedness when Shad is mentioned.
Yeah, like it's a sensitive subject.
It is, and then Carr reveals that Shad has actually visited Zara during their absence.
Which immediately raises all sorts of questions.
Right, like what's the significance of these divine visits? Why is it unusual for Shad to be in Zara? Are there tensions or conflicts happening between the divinities that we're not fully aware of?
And why is Carr so hesitant to talk about it?
It's like they're holding back information, whether intentionally or not.
Right, and then comes the biggest bombshell of all.
You mean the Pinsel de Shad and the aura of a more hostile?
Yes, that. It's like suddenly this whole other layer of mystery is added to Tom's situation.
It definitely changes things.
Hmm.
Carr describes this aura as not malign, but also not pure, which is such a fascinating and unsettling description.
It is. It makes you wonder about the nature of Shad's blessings and whether they always come with unintended consequences.
Yeah, like are there side effects or ambiguities inherent to Shad's influence that Tom is now grappling with?
And how does this tie into Carr's own blessing weakening? It's like there's a connection there that's not fully explained.
Right. It's as if Tom's connection to Shad is somehow impacting Carr directly, but we don't know how or why.
And as if all that wasn't enough, Carr then senses Trat's arrival through non-natural means.
Oh, yeah. That's another reminder of how differently things work in Zara perception awareness. It's all heightened and expanded beyond our normal understanding.
It definitely underscores how Tom is still an outsider in this world, even though he's learning magic. His fundamental worldview is still rooted in his earthly experiences.
Right. He's still catching up in a way, still trying to grasp the full extent of Zara's reality.
So they meet at the Capel, which we haven't really talked about before. Is it like a specific type of building in Zara?
Based on the context, it seems to be some kind of gathering place, maybe a neutral area where people can meet and socialize.
Okay, that makes sense. And Tom's arrival is pretty dramatic. He literally appears through a door that Trat can't see.
Oh, yeah. That's a big moment. It immediately establishes that Tom has access to something beyond the normal reality of Zara.
And Trat's reaction is priceless. She's totally bewildered and a bit freaked out.
Rightfully so. I mean, imagine seeing someone just pop into existence through a door that you can't even perceive.
And she's all dressed up too, which is kind of interesting. We get this little glimpse into her life outside of her interactions with Tom.
Yeah, with the colorful clothes and the braided hair. It adds a bit of depth to her character and makes her feel more real.
But Tom being Tom, he tries to downplay the whole thing like it's no big deal.
But he's still trying to fit in, right? He
Yeah.
wants that normal day, so he tries to minimize the strange.
Which is kind of ironic considering everything else that's going on.
Totally. And Trat being native to Zara,
Hmm.
she knows this isn't normal at all. She's clearly unsettled by it.
And then we get this little exchange about responsibility or lack thereof.
Oh yeah, where Trat gently chides Tom for not having any real obligations.
It's a small detail, but it speaks volumes about their different lives within Zara.
It does. It suggests that Trat has a more established life. She has responsibilities to her community, whereas Tom is still kind of floating through.
And that leads to the really pivotal moment when Tom finally reveals that his home isn't just somewhere else in Zara, but a whole other world.
Yeah, that's a huge turning point in their relationship. He's making himself incredibly vulnerable by sharing this truth.
And you can feel his anxiety about it, his fear of sounding like an alien.
It's such a human reaction in this fantastical situation.
But Trat's response is amazing. Just
Yeah.
pure curiosity, no judgment, just a desire to understand.
Her acceptance is so refreshing, it really sets the stage for what comes next.
So Tom decides to show her Earth through the message enchantment. And I'm curious about this enchantment. Is it like a common form of communication in Zara?
Well, based on the context, it seems like a way to project thoughts or images, but whether it's something everyone can do or something unique to Tom is unclear.
It's pretty powerful, though, being able to share such detailed visions of a completely different world.
It is, and I love how Tom focuses on real, everyday aspects of Earth, avoiding his personal interests.
Yeah, like he's trying to give her an accurate picture of his world, not just fantastical stories.
Exactly. He wants her to understand the reality of Earth, not just his individual experiences.
And Trat is clearly blown away by these visions. She keeps asking if it's all real.
Well, can you imagine trying to grasp the concept of a world without magic or divinities, if that was all you'd ever known?
Yeah, it would be mind-blowing.
Totally. And then they go on this little outing to the periphery of the city, which sounds like a sensory overload.
It does all these descriptions of colorful fruits and strange spices. It
Yeah.
really paints a picture of Zara as a vibrant and diverse place.
It's like the author is trying to immerse us in the sights and smells of this world.
And then they end up at this underground train station, which suggests that Zara has a pretty advanced infrastructure.
Yeah, it's an interesting mix of magic and technology, with the blue globe displaying the schedule in floating text.
It's like they've integrated magic into their everyday lives in a way that we haven't really seen before.
And even during this seemingly mundane train ride, Trat keeps asking about Earth lives, like she's just soaking up all this new information.
It's really endearing, and it highlights the vast difference in their understanding of how the world works.
It's like they're constantly learning from each other, even in the most ordinary moments.
But then, of course, the mood shifts dramatically with the arrival of Zaza and her entourage.
Yeah, talk about a change of pace.
Mm,
It's
yeah.
like the calm before the storm.
It is. The contrast between Zaza's small stature and the formality of her guards is pretty striking.
It's like she commands a certain level of respect and authority, even though she's physically unimposing.
And Trat's reaction is instant panic. This
Yeah.
is clearly not someone you want to mess with.
No kidding. Her fear is so palpable, it immediately tells us that Zaza is bad news.
And then Tom recognizes her. He knows her because she's related to his magic teacher.
Oh yeah, that's a big detail. It connects this potential threat directly to Tom's journey in Zara.
It's like his involvement in this world is starting to have ripple effects he didn't anticipate.
And Trat becomes evasive. She doesn't want to talk about Zaza, which just adds to the suspense.
It does, something big is about to be revealed.
And then we finally find out who Zaza is.
Yeah.
She's an emissary, someone born with a mark of divinity.
Which explains Trat's fear. I mean, that's a pretty high position in Zara's society.
It is. It implies a direct connection to the divine and a level of authority beyond just magical ability.
And Tom being Tom, he's skeptical about the need for emissaries. Like, why do they need intermediaries if the divinities and spirits already exist?
Well, it's a logical question from his perspective.
Yeah.
He's coming from a world where the concept of divine emissaries isn't really a thing.
Right, and then we learn that the emissary of Kar actually presides over the parliament, and there are only a few others in the entire city.
Yeah, it shows how deeply intertwined the divine is with Zara's political structure.
And we get the name Dishkar, the president of the parliament, which is another piece of the puzzle.
It's like we're slowly piecing together the complex hierarchy of this world.
But then Tom mentions that Zaza didn't have this formal presentation during their first meeting.
Yeah, that's a bit strange, isn't it?
Mm,
It makes you wonder why she would present herself differently in different situations.
it does. Like, is she manipulative? Is she hiding something?
It definitely adds another layer of intrigue to her character.
And then Trat says something really unsettling, that emissaries are powerful and often act as they please.
Yikes. That's not a good sign.
No, it's not. And then we get this incredible scene where Zaza and her guards just appear on top of the moving train.
Talk about an entrance. I mean, they literally phase through the roof.
It's like a display of raw power and a complete disregard for the laws of physics.
And then you have these large, intimidating guards struggling to fit inside the train car, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, it's a weird mix of menacing and absurd.
Zaza wastes no time, though she immediately confronts Tom, questioning his absence from his studies and his being with Trat.
Yeah, and her tone is different this time. It's possessive, almost jealous.
You can definitely sense a shift in her demeanor, like there's a personal stake in all of this,
And then she offers him this blue bracelet as a gift, but Trat tells him not to accept it.
which is a huge red flag. It's obviously not a genuine gift.
Yeah, more like a tool for control or something.
And then Zaza threatens Trat if she interferes, confirming that she's not afraid to use force.
And Trat senses jealousy in her eyes, which adds another layer to this whole conflict.
It's not just about power. There's a personal element driving Zaza's actions.
And that's when things really explode. Trat conjures these terrifying green arms to restrain Zaza and her guards.
It's such a visceral reaction, you can feel her protective instincts kicking in,
But Zaza is quick. She uses a detached bench as a shield, deflecting the attack.
which shows how skilled and powerful she is. She's not easily caught off guard.
And then it's just chaos magic flying everywhere as Tom and Trat try to escape.
It's like a battle royale in a confined space. The tension is so thick you could cut it with a knife.
And the fight spills over into another train car with terrified passengers witnessing this magical showdown.
And then Zaza does something really creepy. She creates humanoid creatures out of the train seats.
Yeah, turning inanimate objects into animated threats. That's a whole other level of magic.
It's disturbing and impressive at the same time.
And one of the passengers just slumps over as their seat transforms, which is such a chilling image.
It is. It shows how quickly things can shift from ordinary to terrifying in this world.
And Trat responds by conjuring this bizarre creature that's like a dog-faced, orange-furred snake.
It's a testament to the sheer variety of magical creatures in Zara. They're all so strange and fascinating.
And Zaza is furious. She lets out this enraged cry, but then we get a glimpse into her internal conflict.
Yeah, she doesn't want to hurt Tom, but Trat is in her way.
Which is interesting, right? It suggests that her motivations are more complex than just wanting to capture him.
There's a deeper layer there.
Right.
Maybe a misguided sense of protectiveness or a desire to control the situation without causing him harm.
And then things escalate even further when 4 more guards appear outside the train.
They're like a magical SWAT team adhering to the moving vehicle and trying to bind Tom and Trat with these cords.
It's relentless. The danger just keeps increasing.
And Tom has this sudden burst of agility, like he's channeling the golem.
Yeah, he tries to protect Trat by pushing her aside and almost gets hit by these black metal chains.
It shows his growing resourcefulness and his concern for her safety.
But then it happens, the capture, these black lances pierce Tom's limbs and he screams in agony.
It's a brutal moment, and his question about Carr's absence is heartbreaking. Like, he's looking for help from somewhere, but it's not coming.
And Trat is just horrified. She's completely paralyzed by what she's witnessing.
It's a testament to the sheer shock and terror of the situation.
But then Zaza reacts and she's furious with her guards. She says she told them not to hurt Tom.
That changes everything. It means she didn't intend for things to go this far.
Right. Her initial plan was probably just to retrieve him, but the guards overstepped.
And in her panic and rage, she unleashes this incredible destructive force, destroying the train car around Tom.
It's like an uncontrolled explosion of power fueled by her emotions.
And the aftermath is just devastation. Trat and the guards are thrown from the train.
But Trat manages to stabilize herself with her wings. She's injured but still resilient.
And most of the guards are unconscious, which shows how powerful that blast was.
And then Zaza asks Tom this crucial question: why didn't he go to Temulo as instructed?
Which implies that Temulo's guidance was somehow key to avoiding this whole mess.
Right. So now we have another mysterious figure to consider. Who is this Temulo and what role do they play in all of this?
It's like the mystery just keeps deepening.
And then the biggest reveal of all the black lances dissolve, and we see Tom's true form.
A body made of black shining mass trying to reform. It's mind-blowing.
It completely changes our understanding of who and what he is.
It's like he's not even human in the traditional sense.
And Zaza is stunned. She tries to heal him with pale light, but the wound doesn't close.
Which suggests that his physiology is completely different from anything she's encountered before.
But the fact that his pain lessens is a tiny bit hopeful.
It is.
Mm.
It means that her magic can have some effect on him, even if it's not a complete healing.
And then we get this incredibly poignant exchange between them. Tom asks why, and Zaza, with tears in her intensely yellow eyes, says, "First let me treat you, then we'll talk."
It's a moment of raw emotion that hints at a much deeper connection between them and a possible misunderstanding driving this conflict.
And the final image is so powerful, Zaza using 4 golden arms of light to gently carry the unconscious Tom.
It's such a contrast to all the chaos and violence that came before.
It's a moment of tenderness that leaves you wondering what will happen next. What is the truth behind Zaza's actions, and what does this all mean for Tom's future and Zara?
This whole sequence really throws everything we thought we knew into question and leaves us with more mysteries than answers.
Exactly, and it makes you think about how easily things can spiral out of control, how preconceived notions and misunderstandings can lead to devastating consequences.
It's a powerful reminder that even in a world filled with magic and wonder, the human element is still the most unpredictable and fascinating aspect of it all.
Absolutely. And that's where we'll leave it for today, but I can't wait to see what happens next.
Me too. I'm hooked.
All right, everyone, until next time, keep diving.
And keep questioning.
See you soon.
Bye.